Is that the theme song?
That's just
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Budget and Finance Commission. First, we'd like to have a roll call.
Sure. Commissioner Allen?
Here.
Commissioner Jesty?
Here.
Commissioner Martin is absent tonight. Chair Castle?
Here.
Commissioner Woodham?
Here.
Commissioner Samples?
Here.
Commissioner Sherbin?
Here. Thank you. Please stand and let's salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next, we'd like to approve the order of agenda.
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the item passes. Next, blue folder items. Doug, do we have any blue folder items tonight?
We don't have any blue folders tonight.
Okay, thank you. Next, item F, the consent calendar. Let's see. We need to approve the affidavit of posting for the regular meeting for today.
Moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Down to item H. Doug, are there any e-comments or any emails received from the public tonight?
In regards to public participation, there are no attendees on Zoom and there are no e-comments.
Thank you. There are no items continued from previous agendas. That brings us to item J, which is our items that are for discussion prior to action. First tonight, we'll have from our city treasurer the Q2 fiscal year report. Treasurer Solomon.
Thank you, Chair Castle, members of the commission, Eugene Solomon, Redondo Beach City Treasurer. Tonight we have for you our regularly scheduled reporting for the City Treasurer's second quarter report for 23-24. We received some materials in your administration packet on our agenda. I'd like to introduce to you all our Deputy City Treasurer, Nilesh Mehta, to go through the presentation for you tonight.
Good evening, all. Just before we get started, I just wanted to update you. They are locking the, because the elevators are out of service, they're locking this side. So if you need to exit, they asked me to let you know that this door is going to be open for those who parked in the garage downstairs. So I'll be going over the quarterly admin report, which includes the portfolio summary, reporting guidelines, the investment report by Meter Investment. So it was formerly FHN, it is now Meter Investment. So throughout the presentation, you will see that it is now, they now go by Meter Investment.
So it's the same firm, just different name?
Correct.
FHN was acquired by Meter.
Okay.
So within that report, it includes the portfolio summary, the investment policy compliance, the investment activity report, and finally, the economic and market update. Within the PowerPoint presentation today, we'll be presenting the investment reporting objectives and guidelines, policy compliance, quarterly performance, historical book value, cash flow analysis, month-end portfolio book yield, maturity distribution, trading activity, and then finally, the fiscal impact to the city. As you may have seen this slide in the past, key investment objectives for municipal investing. The city treasurer maintains the city's cash flows while earning a competitive rate of return on investments within the constraints of the investment policy and state law. We try to maintain safety, which is protection of principal, liquidity, which is providing necessary liquidity to cover both ongoing and unexpected cash needs. And finally, yield, which is maximizing earnings, recognizing the need for safety and liquidity. Investment reporting guidelines, always remember whose money it is. It's the community's money, so we must act accordingly in a responsible stewardship capacity. Investment manager's objective is to earn a reasonable rate of return on the city's investment while preserving capital in the overall portfolio. It should never be the investment manager's goal to earn maximum returns on the city's portfolio, as this would expose the city to an unacceptable level of risk. And failures in public investing occur when policies are not clear, they're inappropriate, they are not followed, or oversight is inadequate. So it's important to keep these questions in mind. Do you review the investment policy? Do you understand the investment program? Do you receive and review periodic investment reports? Are they clear, concise, and are they readable? And finally, do you fully understand them? So we'll be going over the policy compliance for the Q2. You'll see on the right-hand column, we were in compliance with the investment policy. And I'll go into further details regarding the performance quarter by quarter. Interesting note here, you'll see that the lay field has gradually been increasing. We were at 3.93. And if you compare that on this chart to the exact same time last year, we were at 2.17. So that really goes to show the rising rate environment. We were fortunate enough to transfer many of the assets that were in LAIF over into the money market account that is managed by US Bank and earning a significantly higher rate than LAIF, currently about 5.5%. So that is a very that's a value to the city's portfolio, because as you can see on this column, we're just about 20 million at the time of end of December. We were at 20 million. That was in the money market fund. So this is a annual performance comparison of the previous fiscal year, and you'll see that the LAIF yield just a couple years ago was 0.22. So significant changes in the interest rate environment. This chart shows the historical book value by fiscal year, and you'll see the ups and downs of the portfolio. And you can compare that with previous months as well as previous fiscal years. You'll see that last year, 2023 fiscal year, was an anomaly just because we had the opportunity to skip the CalPERS payment and invest significant portion of that into our portfolio. And this chart is a historical book value, just a chart that goes to show, dating back to July 2009, the ups and downs of the portfolio. And here's a cash flow analysis that we do on a quarterly basis that shows the beginning balances, total deposits, credits, debits, and then finally the ending balances. We have met the cash flow needs of the city for the quarter and expect to meet the expenditure requirements for the upcoming period. And then this is a month-end portfolio book yield for the city, and you'll see that we're at the end of December, we were just under 3%. So quite a bit of a rise dating back from January 2023. And then here is a chart of the maturity distribution of our investments, and you'll see that just about 37% of our portfolio is invested in mature investments that are maturing within 0 to 1 year, and so on and so forth. Trading activity for the city, for this last quarter, we had a total of 4 redemptions, and we did not have any purchases. So this just shows the month-by-month purchases and redemptions that occurred for the city.
The redemption is a maturity?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. This is a chart of the fiscal year-to-date earnings for the city, and you'll see a month-by-month comparison of how the portfolio is doing in comparison to previous fiscal years and quarters. Finally, the fiscal impact to the city. Interest earned year to date, 1.260 million. General fund contribution is approximately 60%, which is about $750,000 that was contributed to the general fund thus far through investment activity. For the entire fiscal year, we have budgeted 1.5 million. So it seems as though we are on track to meet or exceed that budgeted contribution.
Question. This 60% of the general fund brings up a point we had discussed several times with the previous treasurer, and that is, do you have or can you give us a chart showing ownership of this almost $100 million? This suggests that approximately 60% is owned by the general fund. It would be interesting to know who the other owners of the fund are. I mean, which group, which fund has investment in this fund? We were never able to get the prior treasurer to do that, and we're hoping that since we know the current treasurer a little better, we can get that information. Is that something that's easily available?
It is, and we can provide that to you at your next meeting. We'll provide with specificity the other funds that receive contributions.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
And that is the end of our presentation. So if there's any questions.
Yeah, one additional question.
Yeah.
We used to, at one point, the presentation in the past mentioned a benchmark return, and I don't know whether it was the average 1 through 5 year or 1 through 4 year treasuries. It was some basic benchmark like that. Do you recall what that is? The thought occurs that we should be seeing some passive or easy to reach return comparing to our return, so that we know, we can tell. I mean, we could buy laddered treasuries 1 to 5 years and roll those over, and that gives us a return. For lack of anything else, we could show that because you take the money and put it where you get a little higher return. So that shows some ability to generate return. So it would be helpful to pull out what that old comparison was and show that.
So on this chart, the second quarter, you'll see yield on benchmark, the third from the bottom, and it's 3.1%.
Now, that's yield. Is that, we're looking at the effective rate of return, which is different than the yield. So the yield on the benchmark, is that just current yield, or is that return is a combination of income and capital gain or loss? So is this just income, or does it include the capital gain or loss?
Are you referring to the benchmark yield?
Yeah. And what I'm suggesting is that sounds like that's just a yield. Again, to get at what I'm looking for is a comparison on the effective rate of return would be something that's more than just a yield. It's the yield and capital gain or loss.
Commissioner Woodham, if in the monthly reports, there is a slide on page 13 of the total return performance, including a benchmark on slides 12 and 13. Is this similar to the information you're seeking, or are you seeking something a little bit different?
It could be, but what is the benchmark there?
The benchmark, it goes from a 1 month, 3 months, fiscal year to date, 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year. So within this particular month of reporting, the portfolio was 1.145, and then the benchmark was 1.257.
Yeah, my question is, what is that benchmark? What does it look at? What are you measuring there? What asset is there?
I believe that benchmark is indexed to treasuries, but we'll find out with certainty.
Okay, thanks.
I believe the way Rick calculates his benchmark, and is Rick on the line?
Rick is not available.
Oh, he does a rolling average. I do it differently. He does rolling average, so he took what we have today and goes back 2 years and takes the average of that. So he's not, usually benchmark by default is 2-year treasury. That's how we measure in treasury the benchmark. But Rick does it differently. He takes today's rate and goes back 2 years or 30 months and then takes the average for that. And it really lowers the benchmark because he's a consultant, so I've spoken with him and I tried to do it and it just makes it, the yield's really good, the current yield, but the benchmark, it just dumps.
Yeah, well, the way you describe that, though, that's not really an
I agree.
appropriate benchmark, because that, in a rising rate environment, we're looking at lower rates, and in the lower rate environment, we're looking at higher rates, and neither one of those is the kind of comparison we need. What we need is to look at an alternate way of investing those assets, and say, and normally you pick a fairly conservative or an easy to measure set of numbers, and that's the benchmark. So if it's the average of 2 to 5 year treasuries, that would include income and capital gain or loss from a portfolio that is just, so that's what we need. I mean, it's fairly easy to do, and I think what they had before, this might be it. I don't know whether this benchmark is that or not, but
I mean, I don't want to speak for Rick, and we'll definitely invite him to the next meeting to discuss this further. But if you look at the asterisk, you'll see index, ICE, B of A, 0 to 5 year treasury index.
okay.
Yeah.
It sounds like that's exactly it then.
So we've had conversations about the benchmark that we use, that our investment advisors use, and that our treasurer uses off and on for several years. And we had a benchmark several years ago that looked like we were doing very well for a number of years right after the 2008 fiasco. And then when it got to a point where our portfolio performance was failing the benchmark, they changed the benchmark. I don't remember what it was changed to. And I guess my question is, and just kind of giving the history, is the benchmark that we're using today correct for the environment that we're in?
I think the conversation that we had at the time, if I recall correctly, was about how to view the portfolio, whether you view it with a book yield or not. And we're viewing it as book yield now, and that does affect what performance you're going to see. The benchmarking that we're using here is noted by the asterisk is for similarly situated investment portfolios.
Right.
So I would ask, this is a 0 to 5 year, as noted by the asterisk. If there's a different variation of that other than book yield or other than a 0 to 5 year benchmark that you're interested in seeing, then we can see if we can produce that for you at the next meeting.
I don't think I have enough expertise to actually recommend a benchmark, but I guess what I'm asking is, are we using the right benchmark, and with the resources that your office has and then that our investment advisor has, what is the right benchmark? Should we be reevaluating what benchmark we're using, I don't know, annually, biannually, every 5 years? And what is our overall investment performance against that benchmark? Because it seems particularly the last 10 years, having any benchmark that you rely on for more than 2 or 3 or 4 years is probably going to fall out of sync with the environment that we're in. So that's all I'm asking. I'm not saying that our portfolio performance is bad, but if we're trying to figure out where that is in relation to the rest of the world, is it reasonable to occasionally adjust that benchmark? And what might that be?
Are you suggesting a shorter duration analysis?
I don't think I can give you that. For right now, it seems like that's appropriate, but I'm not the expert in this. We're paying our investment advisors, and I'm sure there are some very smart people that can help figure that out.
I think that we could have a discussion, we can invite Rick and have a discussion about the methodology of benchmarking and the options with regard to that methodology, if that be the wishes of the
That'd be a
commission.
worthwhile discussion to have. But keep in mind, compare this to the equity market when we're talking to CalPERS. The benchmark we use there for equities is the S&P 500. That's the broad market. So with a portfolio like this, which is maxed out, 4-year average, 4-year maximum maturity, 4 or 5-year maximum maturity, an average of 2 or 3, we have on that compliance chart, you look at the assets that we can invest in. We've got from low to high. Well, the basic, a basic and sort of a passive approach would be to pick one of those assets and say, this is what we could get if we didn't have an investment manager, if we simply bought the market, and it could be 1 to 5 year treasuries, what you're showing here. And then the worth of the investment manager is judged at whether you can, by overweighting or underweighting CDs or commercial paper or corporate treasurers or agencies, you can beat that index. And so it might be appropriate to change that from time to time, but at least that's where you'd start. So it'd be helpful to get the investment manager's ideas on that. And this may be the best benchmark that we could come up with, but that'd be an interesting discussion to have.
Yeah, and I know that at one of our meetings, Commissioner Allen had brought it up, an analysis of swaps. We had done an analysis of that, but I'm not certain we got a chance to bring that back.
We have not yet.
So with regard to different options, for lack of a better way of putting it, we're not option traders, but for different options within the portfolio of available vehicles, how we decide which of those vehicles is the most suitable, whether by duration, whether by yield, whether by credit rating, all of those analyses that come in based on our investment portfolio, I think is a worthwhile discussion to have.
I'm curious, Nilesh, the 0 to 5 year treasury, is it calculated or is it kind of copy paste, that number is extracted from treasury?
I believe it's a third party number. It's not created by Rick, I believe. I would have to double
Merrill
check.
Lynch used to
Not
do that.
calculated.
Merrill Lynch used to calculate a benchmark just like that. I don't know who does it now, but it's.
Well, yeah, that would be B of A.
So when was do you know when he changed it, or how often I know he changed it to 2-year rolling average, and do you know when that was? And then he changed maybe again?
I don't recall that. We'd have to ask him. I don't know the details
But
of.
it's-
I don't recall that,
Okay.
but we'll find out.
Okay. I have one other comment. I just have one comment. On a maturity distribution, and I also see there haven't been any purchases in the last, since June or July. We don't really have anything invested up to 5 years. So we don't have a maturity ladder, kind of, they call it usually ladder. I would just suggest to lock in some funds.
We had a discussion.
They are going down.
Yeah, we had a purchase in January, and we had a discussion about our WAM, our weighted average maturity rating. And what we're doing right now is, in a subtle way, reconfiguring some of our cash flows to match up with our maturities, where we would normally have in years past, the years prior to our refinancing of our pension obligations, we would have our maturities coming up in August to be able to service that debt in September or October, when we would prepay our CalPERS. Now we have a little bit different situation where we have a debt service of the lease revenue bonds in May, rather than a large CalPERS payment in September. So for some of the changes in maturities are us massaging our portfolio through a change in our cash flow needs. And looking now at longer maturities, the maturity that we purchased in January was a 2-year maturity. And we were contemplating 3 and 4 year maturities at that point and decided not to opt for that after analysis. We have 2 more maturities coming up here in the coming months that we're looking at taking some longer duration on.
You can use your current funds and then, the rates are going down right now. That's the only reason I ask. Do you have control over what you guys buy? Do you see what's out there, or is it just done by the consultant?
No, we have discussions on a monthly basis with the consultant about available cash flow needs.
Oh, no, the
and possible
purchases.
investment. Yeah, the
Do
purchases.
you actually see what kind of purchases are out there and make a decision, or is it done by the consultant?
We ask for a variety of choices, if that's what you're asking
Yeah,
for.
so- But you
Yes.
have control over what you'll buy. You're not leaving it up to the consultant to buy. what they
Correct.
want.
What the recommendations, we have X number of dollars. We ask to see vehicles within a range of maturity, yield, and safety. And then they make suggestions to us. The deputy treasurer and myself have a discussion about that. We oftentimes have questions that go back to the consultant. And after those questions are answered, we come up with a decision and elect to buy something.
Okay, so it's your decision.
Yes.
And you have choices and you have control over that. Okay,
Yes.
Okay.
What do the consultants charges? What's their fee?
We have a flat rate with the consultant of $18,000 per year. That's what our fee is with, it's still 18,000.
It's still 18,000.
18,000, we have a contract with them through January of 26 for the management of the portfolio. It's a flat rate.
And I just had one quick question, but I think you covered it. In terms of the allocation to the money market fund, we're coming up close to the 20% threshold. But I think you answered it between the maturities and the payment that's coming up in May, that probably will take care of the cash in terms of keeping us under that threshold. So we wouldn't need to.
Yes, so
Discuss that.
from those funds that you saw in there, we had a $2 million purchase in January, which is not reflected on the report because it was the quarterly report ending in December 31st.
Okay.
And then we have some AP and other debt service needs that are coming up on May 1st. So we have that in consideration of where we allocate that money.
Okay.
May 1st is when most of our debt service is due now.
Okay.
What kind of software do we use to do this analysis
The software that we use internally,
generally?
it's not a software that we use. We rely upon the consultant's analysis. We have their monthly reports, our monthly calls. And then if there are recommendations are being made, Nilesh and I can access markets and determine what's out there. We're not doing the actual trading, if that's what you're asking.
I've just
The research.
thinking about
The research, yeah. It's a combination of Bloomberg and a company called Simpro. So what they do is they provide the analysis, research tools needed for making the decision.
they are now introducing artificial intelligence in most of these software packages, so that might shed some light on some of the things that we may not be able to figure out easily. Yeah.
AI is being introduced into a lot of different venues. Whether or not it's being used by those systems, by those reporting agencies, I could not say, but I would be surprised if it were not.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners.
Move that we receive and file the report. And thank you so much to our treasurer,
Second.
actually our treasurer's department.
The whole department. Doug, could we do a roll call vote
Sure.
to receive?
Before we do so, there are no public comments on this item. Commissioner Allen,
Yes.
Commissioner Jesty,
Yes.
Chair Castle,
Yes.
Commissioner Woodham,
Yes.
Commissioner Samples, Commissioner Sherbin.
Yes.
My computer's frozen. Thank you. Next, we will have the fiscal year 23-24 financial reporting from July through December with our finance director, Wendy Colasa. Finance Director Colazo, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Commissioners. Wendy Colazzo. Sorry, this is just my natural voice. I guess the mic isn't on yet. Thank you. Wendy Colazzo, Finance Director. Your February 8th, 2024 meeting. This is to present your Q2, which covers the periods of October through December of 2023. Obviously, this presentation, as I noted, while it says July 1st through December 3rd, it's really picturing the up to year to date for the Q2 results. The presentation, of course, its purposes is to give you this sample of time and its actual performance as it relates to budget. And we've included your data tables as normal to be able to graphically represent any receipts, revenue trends, as well as any expenditure and appropriation trends that we note, and giving you some kind of drivers throughout this period that we feel, affected the budget, where we're trending so we can be well ahead and you can have a full view of the performance up to this date. All right, so first slide. Overall, we wanted to give you the overview of revenue as it relates to the track at this period in time comparative to where you were last year at the same time. So $3.9 million, that's a 5% increase. That is over prior year. Collection revenue is slightly lower at a lower rate. This is not necessarily because we're collecting less. It's actually because the budget was increased and we've collected more. But with the budget increase, we've collected at a rate of 74% to date versus 75 because last year the budget was lower. So this reflects overall the current year budget that is higher to prior year. That's a very long way to tell you that collection rate is at pace currently in the fiscal year as it compares to prior year with the increase that we have done to revenue numbers. General fund continuing on is up and consistent, again, with prior year. Just to give you some of the scenarios here, $1.9 million, 5% increase over the prior year receipts, as I noted through December in the previous slide. 38% of general fund revenue has been received comparative to at this same spot in the prior year, 37%, so a percent ahead of last year. We are on track, of course, to meet our general fund budget. We do expect upcoming with mid-year, as you know, some adjustments downward due to the reports that we received from HDL, one of them being sales tax at $500,000 of reduction. RDA, we have those related adjustments at 0.25 mil. These are the annual redevelopment trust, property trust fund receipts that related to that 2020 successful tax appeal that we did, which again will be included in your mid-year schedule. Moving on, your tax revenue, again, ahead of prior year. We expect to trend slower, but meet and or exceed our budget, even with and after we are done including anticipated adjustments. So graphically represented here is your revenue sources with relevant numbers and notes on how it affected or not affected or nil or lowered any expectations and effects to budget. So I'm going to give you some of the drivers and talk you through this slide here. So again, we remain on track, right? Property tax is ahead by $700K. That's 2% of budget. Overall, the budget was, as you know, last year, given the inception, my inception coming in on that, we stayed pretty flat and just kind of took a snapshot last year to give estimates that were conservative. So naturally, we're going to expect that our largest tax source is doing fairly well. And because we budgeted flat, right, we're going to present good news and expect, a better output. That's really what's going to happen here. Most, as you know, the property taxes are large tax source, right? So 43% of overall general budget. And again, we are expected, our strong receipts, our cycle is going to continue as it normally does to where we're pretty fat, we collect, and then again, we kind of come down, right? Revenue, expenditures kind of have an effect on that, and then we level out, but we do expect to be ahead of that by 5%. Another significant and next revenue source was your transient occupancy tax, your TOT, $1.2 million. It doesn't affect any and does not reflect any of those adjustments I mentioned that we are going to do in mid-year. One of them, of course, that affects that, which we already anticipated in budget, was the marina hotels. We have met with them. We are on track, but originally we were expected to be receiving TOT revenue about December timeframe as they refilled the AFR. However, we've come in discussions with them, and we're looking at a projection of probably about July 20 of next year to start seeing some generation of TOT, and we're on track with them with that. However, we anticipated this, so there's no effect really largely to the budget because we had put a giant goose egg for the marina hotels anyway, so we're well prepared for that. Also, some of the things, the next one, sales tax, again, I kind of said approximately, $600K, 5% of total budget ahead of the prior year. This majority is always related to timing of the, prior year, we received 5 payments at this juncture versus 6 through December. So that's one of an anomaly. We're slightly below on your collections, right? And this is a slowdown we anticipated just across the state it's happening, right? We expected this to occur economically. That's what's going, on. Sales tax is affected by that. We don't intend to have this huge slowdown. We expected this, through our review with HDL. So it's nothing that surprises us, and the budget is reflective of that. Okay. And again, we'll continue monitoring and having our discussions as we do with HDL quarterly and make those adjustments in mid-year that we anticipate. Finally, your franchise fees revenue is about $46,000 down from the prior year. That's a equivalency of 2.1% from budgeted revenue. Again, this is very consistent with the trend of the, just uncertainty of business activity right now that we're receiving. And its reflection is as well in the sales tax, as I mentioned before.
The franchise fee is the business tax license for someone to do business in the city? Okay.
Yes, sir. Moving on here, your non-tax revenue is approximately $1 million or 7% below prior year receipts. Like we noted last time in the last quarter's report, noted that we'll continue to monitor charges for services, right? A lot of the things that are happening and trending with this category also is it's a balancing of what has happened. We had very high usage last year, right? And kind of reliving back and coming back from COVID, and the market is adjusting itself again, right? So that's going to reflect, and we expected it because we're going to see those balancing. It's really not a downturn comparative to the prior year it is, but economically we're balancing back to what normal levels were. And on the other end, some like your community services, charges for services are up on that side, right? And they're covering this deficiency or balancing back up because we have a lot more people using our facilities. We got more camps out there. We got more people doing now, again, reservations for our area. So it's a net effect, okay? Again, not something surprising. We were well prepared for this. Just wanted to give you that we're monitoring this as promised for you, that we're trending as we expected, nothing outside of the norm. And again, as I noted, your key components, recreation program fees, inspection fees, police fees are upward trend as the other ones levelize down. Revenue on all other funds, about $2 million. That's equivalent to 5% greater than the prior year receipts through Q2 at the same time. Some of your largest contributors is the enterprise fund revenue leading it with $1 million. This is highly driven by the transit measure M, local transit, Article 4 here. And then most and other funds that I have not noted that are major are all on track as we expected in comparison with the prior year. All right, stay with me here graphically. You see everything that I've talked about. In case you like the visuals, this is analyzed for you and collected by type of revenue, budget actuals, the collection rate, and comparative at the same time, same period in the prior year, so you can see those deltas. General fund collection, again, current year versus prior year. We've noted everything that I've kind of relayed to you, graphically representing, so that if that resonates a little bit better with you, as you can see, we've made some highlights as to there was nothing really huge that we needed to note other than what we did right now. For license and permitting fees, that reduction coming in from plumbing, building, and electrical, mechanical permits, as we expected, are balancing out, not really, I hate to use decreasing, but it's balancing out to the normal of what we used to have comparative to last year. And then charges for services, plan check fees, and building permits, again, the expected. We keep in communication with our planning department, community services, and all of them, so they can update us on our business and what they expect. And this is something we already knew was coming down the pipe, and it is reflected here. All fund collection rates, again, for this period comparative to prior year. As you know, these are in your big house categories, right? General funds, your special revs, capital improvements, enterprise fund. Not a lot of movement and shifting other than we noted the timing on grant and housing revenue timing. Of course, when we draw down and repay back those funds, that timing is a little bit different of when this posting and these reports get produced for you. So we wanted to note that for you as what is the driver that you're seeing there on a 74% level in the special revenue funds. Total city spending as we move over to the expenditure side for you. Total city spending and percent is actually above prior year. Nothing that is not normal or typical or cyclical for the city of Redondo Beach and most of other municipalities. A lot of spending is in line with what we saw were regular operations. There's a lot of movement and increase driven by grants, right? $5.6 million is the increase, or 6% for you over the prior year. In the general fund is in line with prior year, roughly about 1.4 million ahead with 3%. And then in the other funds category, about 4.2 million, that's a 10% increase over prior year, again, driven highly by grant funding. Continuing on in the expenditure, general fund spending, again through December, we want to emphasize is in line with budget and consistent with prior year, and actually trended with historicals in here in the city of Redondo Beach. Personnel spending is consistent. Again, trending below budget, about 88% indicates a 12% savings from personnel budget. A lot of it has to do with the cycle of retirements, the hiring, the turnover, but it is consistent normally with what we expected would happen with personnel spending. So we anticipate, we don't get too excited just yet because nothing's hard. We haven't balanced everything out, and everything that should be liquid is not done until we close that year out. But we're trending over to have a 12% savings there in the personnel budget at this point. Equipment, M&O, contracts, capital, all slightly high comparative to prior year. Again, this is likely to project timing. We have a lot of things that have been moving as the supply chain moves, the projects that are happening, the strategic plan that is being actually executed, that is all time-based, and our drivers as to why the costs are. We're spending money to get these projects done, and that's the timing that it fell under. So that's the biggest driver happening right now.
So Wendy,
Yes, sir?
on that last slide, the personnel costs,
Yes, sir.
just to drill down a little bit, whoops, now I forget what I was going to ask. That 12% savings, and it's down slightly. Is that just purely natural attrition and turnover, or is there actually a hiring freeze or layoffs going on that are contributing to that?
No, that's natural attrition. There is no hiring freeze or not. We've had expected, as much as we can expect, cyclical retirements. That kind of group is happening, right? And so, as we also levelize in hiring, and they've streamlined some of the positions. So yes, it's absolutely, cyclical and trending correctly. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Again, this is your graphical representation of the expenditures and what I walk through in major categories, or what we call characters, right? For the general fund, your personnel, fringe, M&Os, contracts and services, comparative to the 22-23 timeframe, exactly at the same year, giving you, again, a graphical representation of where we lie comparative to that. Just noting for you on the asterisk, just as you navigate through this, and I'm sure when you have reviewed this, just other expenditures, just remember, include that pension debt and other financing uses in that. Next slide is your general fund expenditure rate. This is by category for the given period. So we have, again, the same ones: personnel, fringe, materials. We've noted your equipment and M&O. As you can see, that percentage kind of goes out there at the 140%, right? And this is the delta, right, between the budget decrease, from 22-23. And then the expenditure rate at which we're going for equipment and M&O right now related to the grant funding, the projects being done, as I've explained in a previous slide. Again, all funds and expenditures. Now this one, for the same period for current year and prior year, this is by general category of funds, your special funds, your special revenue funds. Special revenue funds, as we noted there, 91%. Grant spending is the driver that I kind of mentioned. And then again, your capital improvement fund, you see that increase coming in on project timing rates, showing that delta as we've mentioned, already. Final good slide here, and this is, again, I caution all the time because it's an estimated, and I highlight, bold, and underline that, is an estimated fund balance at the time and snapshot that we're doing this presentation with Q2. So this is not an audited fund balance, but as you can tell, your markers are there. Our estimated fund balance at the time for general funds, special rev, and of course, enterprise funds, which, as you know, always show that negative estimated fund balance, as all of OPEB is always included in that as a liability that goes in there, which is not true and factual for the period. But then we factor in, of course, revenues and year-to-date expenses, which were not fully even clocked in, like I said, on both sides. But estimated fund balance sitting there projected December 31st, if all would stay like this, is at the figures that you're seeing there, which of course will be adjusted at end, and then mid-year you'll have your pulse check.
Wendy, a question on this.
Yes, sir.
Did I understand you to say that this is not necessarily a cash figure, so negative 3.6 million for the general fund?
That's correct, sir.
Okay.
And I like to clarify that because most people think, and what I've seen in previous meetings for this commission, they thought that we were doing cash, and it is not cash. There's also non-liquid items in this, and I just like to note that for you so that nobody gets nervous.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. And then that will be trued up at the end, as we always do. So this, next slide, just simply giving you an update. Mid-year budget review, we are in full swing. I'd like to kind of just report to you, give us a status that my inception, believe it or not, I'm getting ready to earn a year here in Redondo Beach. And we were, at that time, 7 months behind schedule. We are currently exactly 29 days behind schedule. It's been a tremendous feat with this team, who has just charged hard in an ever-loving cycle. But normally we are doing mid-year in a perfect year on January 12th, and we will be kicking it off on February 12th. We have the calendars out there for your review. You'll be seeing it. Our adoption date goal is March 19th, and you'll be seeing it before that for your review and approval before it goes to council with your recommendations. So we'll have that calendar for you that we'll just, kind of share, but I'm kind of just telling you we're kicking off on Monday, and you'll be able to review with very well in time, so you have time to regurgitate it. Like I said, we have all expected kind of adjustments that we know we're going to make that I've kind of shared with you. And then May 9th, 2024, we'll prepare to give you Q3 review and continue on until we kick off 24-25, if you can believe that budget.
We had I think, a balanced budget forecast for fiscal 24. Based on what you're seeing now, you'd still say it's balanced or slight positive?
I believe it's going to be slight positive. It's going to be closer to net balanced because it's truing up, you know what I mean? So we are going to have some fund balance that I see happening and some savings there, not significant whopping dollars, but we're getting towards just net zero balanced here, right? Especially because of some of the anomalies that we knew were coming from the revenue side. You got to also remember too that we're working on streamlining both the revenue and the, expenditure side, just with policy, streamlining our procedures, how we're buying, all that stuff is going to end up making a big difference in future years. But 24, 25 is definitely by that time frame I expect to end very close to our estimates. Last time our estimates happened at this go round for mid-year, I was $30,000 off in the positive for the city. So that was a big win for the city manager and ourselves that we, I guess did our job that day.
Well, kudos for what you've been able to accomplish the first 12 months here. We appreciate the information you've given us. It's very good.
It's a team, Sarah. These guys, rock and roll every day. So, I'm just humbled to be a part of it. So appreciate you all. And, sorry.
How much have you allocated for the rainy day fund? Literally, like what we saw earlier this week.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that, sir.
How much have you allocated for a rainy day fund?
So I don't really kind of work on a rainy day, fund, right? We have our
Or reserves?
required, as you know, we have to keep 8%, 8.3% in reserve at all times to keep in case the wheels fall off this thing. In 25 plus years of my experience in government, I've never had to use that reserve, but we always continually have to keep that regardless. So it's always there. We got, what our requirements are by charter, so.
And currently, I think that's about 8.559 million that's sitting there in fund balance.
That is correct. And just to note too, we never change those requirements because normally we adjust it. We have to adjust it based on our operations, and we actually lowered expenditure operations. But we felt that given that new bodies were coming in and we were kind of transitioning, we felt to keep those levels, for the city's well-being, just to levelize until we had a good handle on it. And so we're well ahead. Yes, sir.
I just had a quick question about the grants. Just in terms of what you're seeing from the sources of those grants, does it look like that will continue at the same rate going forward? Just because I know we're ahead of schedule. In your report, you said we were ahead of schedule for the year, but one of our concerns, just like the downturn in, collection of other taxes, do you think those grants are going to go down?
So it's a great question to ask us right now because, I hate ever to answer a question not truthfully to you and transparently. So, grants has been what seems, 30,000 foot view, a very permanent structure in the city now. And we are getting some big dollars that we want to vet as to how viable that revenue source is. I believe it's pretty strong in the sense that we're not anywhere near losing anything or nothing like that, but I am qualifying right now and I will have those answers to you as we review the sustainability of those grants. At this time, it's not, I can't say that it's not a significant portion now. I mean, we're well over the single federal, requirement, of over $750,000 coming into the city on grant funding. But we'll vet that for you to really tell you, hey, I want to come with those answers as far as telling you that 25% of the budget is based on grants, because that's important for you guys to know in case, something does happen, right? So we're working on that as we speak, to kind of fill that plan of just bringing back grants to where we are, what its value to the budget, and we'll have those for you. And hopefully, ideally, we're with our bandwidth right now and what we have, we're trying to do it by next quarter, reporting, have, something as we work. But, I got to keep Doug happy a little bit too. I can't push him that, he does good work already, so.
Okay.
But we will have those and I'll have firm answers for you on that.
Okay, terrific. Thank you.
And I'll say, Doug might actually have more specific information on this. The ones that we've called out in the presentation are specifically our transit grants. And I believe, and Doug, please correct me on this, I believe that those are pretty solid sources of revenue ongoing that we have a particularly strong spending plan for this year. Does that sound about right, Doug?
Okay, thank you.
So if any other questions, if not, that concludes my presentation for Q2 for you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Do I have a motion to accept and file a report?
I would just comment that I thought it was very clear and concise, and appreciated the fact that we didn't have to run through a series of eye charts, that there was a summary that kind of made sense. So thank you very much, and congratulations on your first year, and look forward to many more.
Thank you. Likewise. I really appreciate it.
You decided to stay, right? You're not going to leave.
I think so, you know? I like,
Coming with you if
I like
you-
that Wazansky guy. Yeah. Keeps me sharp.
Okay. Do I have a motion to receive and file?
So move.
Second. Okay, Doug, could you take a roll call for us, please?
Sure. And for the record, there are no public comment on that discussion item. Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Jesty? Chair Castle?
Aye.
Commissioner Woodham?
Aye.
Commissioner Samples?
Aye.
Commissioner Sherbin?
Aye.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, are there any member items or referrals to staff?
We've got a pension
We
status.
get a-
Oh, sorry, apologies.
Come on.
He doesn't get to leave yet.
Almost.
Next, we have on the agenda, the pension status update.
Right, okay. So I just hopefully wanted to clarify and make sure that we understood, because the way we kind of injected this was to give a slot to this commission that, you guys got the information that was given to that, Mr. Woodham, the treasurer, when we had the conversations with the actuary, and kind of just did a presentation or slide deck for that party, and we wanted to share it with this commission now that they've had their discussions, and we briefed them so you had the same. This really was a forum for you to, as you requested, wanted to discuss CalPERS, and we just took all the notes for you and opening it up for you all to have the discussion that you requested you wanted. I think, like I said, one of the commissioners was mentioning just at the end, and you guys would have this open forum. So for us, this was your forum on the pension with the information that you have received to have the discussion that you would like to have on CalPERS for your committee.
The first comment I want to make is that it's, I think somebody in Redondo is doing a really good job in finance, that although CalPERS was not able to perform, you're still in a good shape. You're able to pay the debt, and you have the funds, and you were able to have your budget all ready to go. So, I mean, to me, you guys are good with what you do.
There were a couple of charts in that, the next part that was included in the agenda, the colored slides and so forth. Some information in there that I frankly didn't understand. Number one, we started out for fiscal 22 looking at initially it was a negative return of negative 6.1%. Then that was updated to a negative 7.5%. And then there was a reference in one of those slides to an effective rate of a negative 8.6%. How in the heck did we get from 6.1 to 8.5?
Oh, we were ready for you, Chairman Woodham. So I'm going to let Stephanie talk, because this was her deck, and she has we fell in love with this whole thing. So I'll let her talk about it and walk you through, because she will clear that up really quickly, because we've had the same question, so.
I'll just respond quickly on the 8.6%. This came out of our discussion, the one that we had prior to the one you were involved in, Commissioner, with our actuary, Paul. And he was trying to describe to us the impact that our having kind of a larger amount of assets exposed to this big loss was. So he said, even though the investment return was about 7.5%, the way it impacted our portfolio due to the timing was more like we personally experienced an 8.6% loss. And that's how he explained it.
Insofar
to
as
us.
the amount of UAL that it would generate.
Exactly.
But the actual return is still negative 7.5.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Sorry, so that,
I thought we'd lost another 100 basis points from return.
we did not.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then there's another chart in there, the last chart, the next to last chart, which shows UAL for fiscal 24 and fiscal 25. And it shows a total UAL of $163 million. And we just paid off $221 million of UAL.
Which,
and
Excuse me, which slide is this one on?
Pardon?
It's the unfunded accrued liability. And
Oh,
fees.
I see. Sorry, you're talking about the 163.4 million.
Yeah.
So again, this is just related, I think, to the timing of when we get our actuarial reports. So that fiscal year 23-24 reflects a measurement 2 years prior. So that 163.4 million UAL would not have reflected our payment. And then you'll see in fiscal year 24-25, which again reflects the actuarial reports 2 years back, ending fiscal year 21-22. The 42.5 million reflects that pay down. Does that make sense? All of this becomes confusing because of the timing of our actuarial reports and then when that affects our budget.
I think that was one of the biggest notes that our actuarial made very clear to us, that when we were kind of dinging the representative who came here, they're working on an estimate at the time, and here comes the actuary, as you know, in the business, and trues it up, but they use figures that are 2 years behind, which is kind of unbeknownst to the audience, you know? So at the time that you're looking at that, when you're going like, wait a minute, we paid something, where's that reflected? Well, because we're using 2 years back numbers, at that time you had not made, or the city had not made that payment. So it kind of extrapolates what you're looking at, because it's not a true comparison to what really happened, because we're working with 2 years back every cyclical time.
So it really makes, that data is sort of irrelevant to where we are now. Do we have a good figure, a good estimate of, at the end of fiscal 21, when we did the bond issue, we were in fact a little overfunded. So there was no UAL. And we generated UAL in both fiscal 22 and 23. Has anyone given us an idea of what, a ballpark figure as to what that level of UAL might be? If we could do the calculation today at the end of fiscal 23,
Oh.
do we have any idea what UAL would be?
I think we may be able to use their pension forecasting tool to figure that out. I think we could, if we wanted to try and figure out where we are versus at the end of fiscal year 21-22, which is again what this $42.5 million represents. But again, it's also just, it's a moving target, right? Because the investment returns are going to change, various things about our plan will change. And they put all those together to come up with our contributions, which will set our unfunded liability. But I'll take a look at our pension forecasting tool, because I believe we can use that to come up with some kind of projection.
It'd just be kind of good to have, in case we're building up toward a negative, nasty surprise,
Yep.
it would be good to know, soften the blow a little bit if we knew what that would be. And to the extent that the model would allow us to do that with any accuracy, then it's worth doing.
I think that's what we walked away with, that one, we didn't know that tool existed, and we're kind of also, because of transition, coming back to what finance can go in and dig a little bit more and do a little bit a la carte service for this city. Just remember, and I think you've been told this before too, is that as we, let's say this tool is somewhat accurate, right? I don't want to get accustomed to the ever-changing variables that we don't know, and that holds us to the fire as well, because I don't want it to make decisions that would be based on a monthly or quarterly calculation that's estimated. So I just always caution that, because then, I'm held to the fire with that. And, because once the numbers are laid out, people like them or not, right? And if they don't come true, then they're like, what happened here? So we're trying to develop, and we talked with Stephanie, like she's saying that we're going to go look at the tool to develop what reports would be significant for this commission that we can do, that we feel comfortable saying, hey, we kind of given a slight calculation of this, it looks like this, that would, at least give us, like you said, some indicator of something, and if we kind of do it right, I think we should be well ahead and proactive of anything that possibly could come, unless, things that, we don't have crystal balls to happen, right? So.
And then last question from me, the indication from CalPERS was that somewhere hidden in all of their data, knowable only to God and someone like you all who can read the data, we can figure out what quarterly returns are. And Stephanie, I think that, sure, it may be falling on you. Have you taken a look at the first 2 quarters of the year to see what,
I looked at the returns as of, I believe, November. And then they're going to publish another report coming up in March at their investment committee. So I'll take a look again at that time. I think that might be a time where we can use this pension tool to put in some of their estimated returns and give kind of like a, 1 to 2% on either side, and see what that does. Maybe we could bring that back to you at our next quarterly meeting, if that's helpful.
okay, thanks.
I'll just make one note about this table, the 23, 24, and 24, 25 unfunded accrued liability. One reason why we put this in here at the time of putting this together is we were trying to show what happened to the city's huge paydown, right? We spent $226 million, and then we come back with unfunded accrued liability. So we did think it's important to show prior to this pay down and after the pay down. It's unfortunate we're at 42.5 million, plus whatever it is now. But there is a huge drop that we see, and that is not insignificant for the city.
Help me with one thing, and then I'll offer a comment. My understanding of unfunded liability is these are the folks, or these are the accounts that, for the most part, what caused the unfunded liability in the first place was underfunding the massive retirement systems or the massive retirement payouts that were calculated as being appropriate by CalPERS. And since PEPRA has come into effect, we've got a larger and larger proportion of employees that we shouldn't have unfunded liability, or it should be very, very small. Can you help me understand the difference between those two?
So the unfunded accrued liability is really just the difference between the value of the contributions that we've made for employees and the value of the benefits that we owe them long-term based on the agreements. So you're correct in saying that a lot of this is driven by these very, very generous benefits that, cities and everyone else agreed to in prior years, and that the newer employees with, again, the limited benefits through PEPRA, will expect to see a lower long-term liability associated with those. So that's completely correct. I think we don't know necessarily the amount of that difference. So I think I would caution against thinking that PEPRA is going to solve 100% of pension problems. It may not. We're still, again, going to have volatile investment returns because that's, the nature of investment returns. But you're absolutely correct that generous benefits are a big driver of this cost, and PEPRA is going to mitigate that.
So I guess the next part of that question, part B, is do we have an idea as of 2 years ago when we made this contribution versus now, what percentage of our employees are PEPRA versus the traditional plan?
We know exactly what that number is. I don't know it off the top of my head.
But, okay, fair enough. So the other part is just a comment regarding tracking the quarterly performance and tracking what's going on with our anticipated, anything that your department can do to anticipate in advance what our UAL is going to be in future years, I think would help us, and I believe it would help the city council when we get into the year-end discussion of allocation of any excess funds. If we know that we've got a massive UAL that's coming up in the following year, it's going to help inform decisions about what else can we spend this extra money on. So that's my only comment on that side of it. And it's just a matter of managing cash flow. But otherwise, I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, no. Do we have section 115 trust in Redondo?
No, we do not.
Just something to look into for diversification purposes? Because that's the money that can be invested and used for employer payments. And the other thing that I like about it is if something happens, you have a big expense, unanticipated, and Treasury doesn't have the funds because it was not projected when we needed the funds, and you can, instead of Treasury selling their investments at a loss to liquidate funds, you can use that money. So that's the purpose of it. But no, that's all, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you. Any comments from outside?
No, we do not have any e-comments or participants on Zoom.
Okay. Do we need to receive and file this as well? Okay, could I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Doug, if you could give us a roll call.
Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Jesty, Chair Castle.
Yes,
Commissioner Woodham,
Aye.
Commissioner Samples, Commissioner Sherbin.
Aye.
okay, thank you. Next item, member items and referrals to staff. Do we have any items or referrals to the staff for tonight?
Yeah, I've got one. I was trying to go back to my CAFR report, at the annual report, and pick up something on legal expense. And I discovered that I don't have a fiscal '23 CAFR. Has that been printed yet?
No, we're wrapping that up right now for fiscal year '23. We haven't completed the ACFR yet.
Okay.
Actually, we're having a special meeting next Friday to present that to you as a draft. So we'll have a draft version of it. Won't be cover to cover, but it'll be a draft.
I thought I'd lost mine, so I didn't know it wasn't ready yet. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other items? Okay, and I guess we'll adjourn at this point.
We adjourn.
Yes, you got a motion and second?
Motion, I
Okay.
have a motion to.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Thank you.
Aye.
Aye.
You got to use your hammer after all.
Exactly.